At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Anastasia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm glad that we got this all worked out. And folks that are listening, we struggled a little bit with our equipment today. So anyway, we're going full bore now. Anyway, would you mind just sharing with the audience your personal journey? I find it always fascinating. You are where you are now, doing what you're doing, but what was the journey that brought you to this point?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. It's all credit to my journey, really. And I guess I would start by saying what started this journey. And that was in 2016, within the space of 30 days, my life as I knew just imploded, exploded, very unceremoniously when my marriage ended. I had to close my business and file for bankruptcy, and I was suffering burnout and left homeless within the space of just 30 days. And that was such a painful realization of how I was unconsciously creating my life. And I guess that's what we're going to go into today, how it was my awakening point that helped me to choose a different path that led me to where I am today.
Okay, so you've really gone through some tough things. As I understand it, divorce, depression, bankruptcy, burnout. And did you burn out with your business?
Well, my business was really just burning through my savings, because I guess I was on survival mode in every area of my life, and I didn't realize it. And because my relationship was, needing so much of my time and attention, I neglected taking the steps that I needed to take probably a lot sooner in my business. Everything was on autopilot, and it was like a slow motion crash waiting to happen.
Wow. And, talk about change. And, I've talked about this before with folks, and it's like change can be so difficult to deal with. And I think sometimes, and hopefully we can talk about this as you work with your clients, how often you find that the fear of change affects their ability to actually do what they need to do to experience that transformation. So the other question I have is, you tend to work mainly, if not exclusively, with women. Why is that?
That's true. It wasn't an intentional decision. It just kind of happened that way. And it's really interesting because when I look back at all the businesses that I've had, I've always only worked with women. Even when I was in the fashion industry, I had a slow motion or a independent fashion brand where even my makers and my craftsmen were women as well. So I think the work chose me. I didn't deliberately make that choice. And the interesting fact is as well that I have 3 brothers, and most of my friends are males. So I think this work chose me for whatever purpose. And I love it because I do believe that working with women is like working with the lifeline into a family, into a community, into society. So I'm really very honored that I get to work with women. And for that purpose, I specialize in feminine psychology as well.
Okay. And what I find very interesting, and I want you to talk about this, you have developed a therapy called rapid alignment therapy. Okay. I assume that you went through your own transformation, and I don't know how many years you spent or how many months you spent really working on that. I'd like you to share, if you don't mind, be transparent with the audience, what your process was, and then how did you come up with this rapid alignment therapy? And then we'll talk later on about what it actually is.
Yeah. So I'll talk about where I started on my journey in 2016 when everything went down to ground zero. I started with manifestation and mindset. That's just, at that moment in time, that was my level of consciousness. And that was what I found available to me in 2016. It was, oh, okay, thoughts become things. So if I can change my thoughts, I can change my things. I can change the life that I'm manifesting, quote unquote. And gosh, the journey from there just really sent me deeper and deeper and deeper into working not just on your thought level, so the mindset level, but understanding the quantum physics of manifestation, as well as understanding and needing for my own personal gain and benefit to go deeper into psychology and deeper into spirituality. So rapid alignment is really just a birthing of everything that I've had to learn. And it all started very fluffy and fun and surface level, and it sent me deep into the depths. I've even explored plant medicine as well, only to discover that that's definitely not the path for me. And that's not the path that I want to facilitate for other people as well.
So again, I'm asking for some transparency here, and you can stop me whenever you choose to. But when you talk about mindset, and we're going to talk a little bit, hopefully, about brain patterns. But as you looked at that in your own life, did you discover that there were some mindsets, subconscious imprints, whatever that happens to be, that was literally causing you to attract the challenges that you were experiencing? Was that something that you experienced?
Well, we're always attracting or manifesting unconsciously, and your unconscious will always outweigh your conscious efforts. So it's not as simple as saying, change your mindset and everything will change, because there's an unconscious desire to seek out and somehow create the familiar preferences. Let's call them preferences. So perhaps we have a preference for attracting specific challenges romantically or financially, maybe even on a psychosomatic level, physically manifesting psychosomatic symptoms. Autoimmune diseases are 100% psychosomatic. So we may have a certain inclination, and this is where, for me, it has to do with your programming. What were you programmed for? And that's your operating system. That's your baseline. And we are always living to our minimum standard, never to our maximum potential.
Well, and you talk a little bit, I know, about brain patterns, and I look at that, and I have a story I might share with you in a minute or two. But what have you found these brain patterns, these neural pathways? What occurs, and how are they developed, and are they, in some respects, the cause of why we experience what we're experiencing from a subconscious level?
Everything is subconscious. Okay. Everything is subconscious and unconscious. So yes, your brain patterns are your default neuro pathways that were created in your formative years, 0 to 7 years old. We know how important those years are, particularly when we're talking about trauma and character development. So these are the years in which you're just a sponge and life is happening to you, but your subconscious mind needs to create conclusions in order for it to make sense of the world and in order for it to make sense of your place in the world. So a lot of these conclusions, which we created in those years, are now your default as an adult. And because we have a negative bias, we will always unconsciously seek to validate those belief systems or those conclusions that were created, like a conclusion such as, I'm not good with money, or a conclusion such as, I'm not worthy of love, or I can't find healthy love. And this is what we unconsciously now are attracting to continually validate exactly what we've already concluded about life and the world around us.
Well, and you talked about the quantum physics aspect of that. And I found this is so true. And I kind of use the example of a magnet, how unconsciously, subconsciously, we've created that energy. And, we all have to be right. So we will tend to be right about whatever that is. And we will tend to attract, as a magnet, the very experiences that we anticipate and expect. So if we expect, as you were talking about, not doing well with money, that's what's going to happen. If you expect, anger or whatever, that's what's going to happen. And I find it fascinating. It's interesting, and I will share the story with you. I shared it just the other day on another podcast, but I think it's fascinating. So I have a history. I'm a dentist. I was a dentist. Okay. I used to play a lot of tennis and so on and so forth. I'm starting to play golf, and I'm not great at it, but I'm starting to play. And as I was working with a coach the other day, as I was swinging, I kept lifting my left shoulder, which caused all sorts of horrible shots, right? And every time I was doing that, he said, look, don't lift your shoulder. And here I am consciously trying to go, okay, I'm not going to lift my shoulder. And so I take the swing, and guess what happens? I lift my shoulder. And so when I got home, I started to think, all right, why is this? And what's the cause of that? And I realized that as a dentist, I was always sitting in a way where my left shoulder was raised because I was right-handed and working on patients. And also when I was playing tennis, because I'm right-handed, most of my swings on four swings were lifting my left shoulder. And so I literally have developed this brain pattern of lifting my left shoulder. And doggone it, it is the most difficult to overcome. And I can imagine how difficult it would be for your clients to overcome some of those brain patterns that have been with them for years.
Well, Doug, maybe you need to book a session with me. We can rewire that in a single session. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that is exactly a very physical example of what happens unconsciously. And I had one of the most interesting cases, which I've had, was a client that came to me during the beginning of the pandemic. And the reason that she booked a session with me is because she had diabetes. And as a result of that, she needed to get injections into her eyeballs. So that it wouldn't deteriorate her vision. And during the pandemic in the UK, all the clinics and hospitals kind of closed to outpatients, as we will remember. So she wasn't able to get her regular injections. And she was so terrified of her vision worsening. So we did a single session. And what we did find is when we regressed into her childhood years, this was a programming, the diabetes was a programming that was programmed into her by her mother. And that was something that her mother said to her, that everyone in our family always has diabetes. Everyone in our family always gains weight. Everyone in our family always eventually loses their vision, which is exactly what she had conditioned herself unconsciously now for in her later years. And in just a single session, not only were we able to rewire those patterns, but her is it her glucose levels were more stabilized. She started she lost a whole dress size within the space of, I think, 2 or 3 months. And her doctors were just blown away by the state of her vision, which was actually improving, so reversing itself. And all of that was just subconscious programming. So this really raises the question of nature versus nurture. Which one bears more weight? And how much can we program ourselves and upgrade that operating system to evolve and to ascend from what we previously have believed to be true for us?
Yes, and I think that's so true. One of the things that I find interesting, I'm in Thailand, okay? And so I have found it just fascinating to study Buddhism and so forth. And as I've talked to people, as I've worked with a few people, one of the things that I find, and you talk about this a little bit, is this concept of divine alignment, this concept of who we truly are. And I asked someone, a Buddhist, just the other day, I said, so what does he talk about as far as who you are? And they couldn't answer that. And I thought to myself, it's so interesting that we have this, I'm not good with money, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I can't do that. And we're taught from an early age, depending on our theology background, that we're really not good. We're born in sin, all this type of thing. How do you help people as you work with them to start to understand that divinity that lies within them? And it's just merely a matter of peeling back the onion rings to the point where they discover who they truly are.
So my partner and I actually also practice Buddhist philosophy, and it's a very big part of our outlook. Of course,
and by the way, I love Buddhism, and my partner also is Buddhist. So,
when it comes to deconditioning from something as strong as a religious ideology, it really, really does require your willingness to allow both things to be true, that while we are not imperfect, we have also been designed to be perfectly flawed. And that within itself just allows you to create more space for forgiveness, for acceptance, and for compassion. And what I have found, particularly with religious constructs, is that there is so much disconnection from yourself and so much disconnection from your innate wisdom and your God self, your ability to create as a creator. I see us all as extensions of God, just in the same way that we are all cells of the earth and we are all extensions of the earth. We are not separate from each other, and we are not separate from earth, and we are not separate from life itself. And that what is God? God is pure life force energy. And as long as you are alive, that is coursing through your veins. And in the same respect, we all have the same potential to be good and the same potential to be bad. And none of those supersedes the other. It's just, what am I choosing? So particularly with religious programming, there's a lot of shame. And in my opinion, shame is not a real emotion. Shame is a manufactured emotion. If you look at the animal kingdom, the only other animal that will display shame and guilt is the domesticated dog. Why? Because it was trained by us. Why?
Right,
because we taught it that so that we can control its behavior. When your dog tears up your sofa, sure, he's going to appear to feel bad when you punish him or you shame him for it. Does it mean that he didn't enjoy tearing up your sofa? No, he enjoyed tearing up the sofa. Does it mean he'll never do it again? He might, or he might do it again and then follow that action with shame again.
Well,
and
so
shame.
how do you work with your clients then to help them to really discover the goodness that lies within them. Because I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast that are experiencing that sense of, I'm not good. I'm really not a good person. I'm not good enough, whatever that happens to be. How do you help your clients to delve inward and discover and understand the goodness that really is there?
The three most common blocks that really, whatever situation or whatever difficulty a client comes to me with, that people will have is, I'm not enough, it's not available to me, and I'm different. And the beautiful thing about rewiring on a subconscious level is that on a subconscious level, we can update this program. So it's not enough to just do, surface level mindset work and affirmations and EFT tapping, for example, which are all beautiful tools and practices, but they need your continual conscious effort and willpower and repetition. So what we are doing there is we are changing temporarily, not truly transforming on a quantum level. So we do this on a subconscious level. That's where the belief lies. So that's where we understand what role, function, or purpose it is serving by dialoguing with your subconscious mind, and then upgrading it or giving it permission to have a different preference or to allow a different narrative to also coexist. And by default, you will naturally start to allow yourself and have a preference for the thing that makes you feel better. And that's going to be, I am good enough. I am powerful. I am limitless. All these things are available to me.
So here's a question. When you had talked about taking people back and really discovering what those limiting beliefs are and so forth, are you using hypnotherapy? Are you using NLP? And is that part of your rapid alignment therapy, or what is all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So rapid alignment therapy is my modality of hypnotherapy, which is a hybrid. Of course, NLP is a part of that. And it is really broken up into two sessions, really, if we want to heal on all levels. Through the hypnotherapy, we allow ourselves to heal and support mentally and emotionally the parts of us which were abandoned when we didn't have permission or we didn't have the right support or tools to do so. And in the second therapy session, which is neurodynamic hypnobreath work, is where we release things somatically and energetically as well. Because remember, it's not just the mind that is holding on to memories, it's also the body, which is where physical ailments will manifest as a result of that.
So how do you compare that? Because as you talk about breath work, and I immediately think about meditation, and I know a lot of different people who talk about meditation talk about using breath work to get rid of some of that stuff. What has been your experience with what you do with your rapid alignment versus someone who is meditating, breathing, and consciously trying to also remove those negative aspects?
You are conscious in both of those types of sessions, or at least you're lucid, right? And we want to be lucid in those sessions so that we can know and understand, because we are curious by nature. We want to understand things as we release them, and we want to understand their purpose and why they were so important to us. So I guess the difference is really just the way that I facilitate my sessions. I don't exclude spirituality. I don't exclude past lives. I don't exclude ancestral trauma and healing, which may be alive in you right now. So everything is accessible. That way, everything is able to be tapped into and everything is able to be upgraded. What we do is we pattern interrupt. So we find a brain pattern that no longer serves us, and we review. We never relive. We are reviewing a pattern, and assessing its necessity moving forward. Is this a brain pattern that serves me? Is this a brain pattern that is important to me? And how can I upgrade or promote this brain pattern to something that is more expansive, to something that is so much more permissible in my life?
Well, and you talk about ancestral influences, and I think a lot of people don't understand this, and this is something that I really love to talk about, is that literally our DNA holds all of those experiences of our ancestors, and we're going to get different ones. But what are some stories you can share? Any particular stories that you can share without naming names of someone who literally was affected by ancestral imprints, and how you actually help them to overcome that?
Oh, yes. Immediately, someone that comes to mind is a German client that I had. It's a male German client, and because of the history, which we're all familiar with, we did a lot of past life regressions with him, and we found that he had so many lives where he was involved in wars that he didn't believe in, where he was a victim of wars that he didn't believe in or didn't want to participate in as well. And there was a repetition in his life, really, of him feeling unsafe. When he started his business, when it was about to grow, he would shrink and he would play smaller. He had a certain relationship with his father as well that would keep triggering this feeling of unsafe, of I'm going to lose him, I'm scared of losing him. And this really affected the quality time that he gets to spend with his father specifically and with his family. So this was really, really fascinating, because we were able to do past life regression with this particular client and find that there's a repetition of ancestry and generational trauma that is imprinted in his DNA. Like you said, the DNA has a memory.
Well, and I have friends that swear, and I trust them so much, that they've experienced past life type of thing with past life regression. I look at that and I think, how much of that potentially is DNA history of past ancestors? Any thoughts on that, as far as, is it really past lives? Is it DNA history of past ancestors? What's been your experience as you've worked with so many clients?
I'm a believer in past lives just because I've seen it so many times. And one of the most famous psychiatrists was Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote the book Many Lives, Many Masters, who became a convert for past lives because he was using hypnotherapy to help his clients, and they would just move into lives and times and situations that were simply not explainable. Now, when I get a skeptic that says to me, well, how do I know that this is really a past life and it's not, maybe a movie that I've seen, or how do I know that this isn't my mind making things up? And I allow that. I say, okay, then look at it as a metaphor. Either way, your mind is communicating something to you. So we don't need to reject the information just because it's not something that we choose or want to believe in, or it's something that conflicts with our beliefs. See it as a metaphor. Is it really important where it comes from, or is it important that you get a result moving forward?
Amen. I love that answer. That's great. So you only work with women. And as you said, most of your friends are men, but you tend to attract and work with women. Have you found that there are common patterns with women that they continually struggle with? And what would those patterns generally be?
Well, this is, why I say I specialize in feminine psychology, and I've had people kind of challenge me on what is feminine psychology? Is it a real thing? I also work with polarity. So when we talk about polarity, it's the masculine and the feminine traits, which we all have, by the way. You
Yes.
have feminine traits and feminine qualities, and I have masculine traits and qualities about myself as well. And really, it's those four quadrants of the masculine and the feminine where we want to find balance in their expression so that we can find harmony and peace in our expression and in our lives and in the dynamics that we create with our partners. So those four quadrants are the light masculine, the light feminine, and the dark masculine and the dark feminine. And we're able to see where we are with the expression, and are we expressing a wounded version of these traits, such as, for example, people pleasing is a wounded masculine trait, whereas chaos is a wounded feminine trait. So when we are seeing certain characteristics that keep repeating themselves, that's because it's a wounded expression, which may be a result of trauma from your childhood, or maybe even a result of your upbringing. So how you were groomed to be as a little boy or as a little girl.
Okay, so what are, as you talk about that, what are some of the common patterns that you see with the women that you work with? Are there some that you can say, you know what, as I start to work with someone, I can almost anticipate that 1, 2, 3, here's some patterns that they're going to fall into?
Yeah, I can recognize patterns immediately now, but where that pattern was first imprinted is completely unique to that person, that person's experience, which is something we can only discover under the alignment therapy session when we work on a subconscious level. But in terms of what patterns do I see with women, I think the modern women is really struggling and burning out and creating relationships that she isn't enjoying because she's been over masculinized, because she's working like a man in the men's workforce. And she's taking that exact blueprint and she's taking it home, which is why she's not finding harmony and balance in her romantic life as well. So I really love to support women to decondition from how we were taught that we need to be able to juggle having an amazing career and making our own money, as well as having a husband at home, as well as managing the home, and as well as raising children. Those are all, 3, 4, 5 different full-time jobs. And why do we have this egoic need to be masterful at absolutely all of them? Why not allow ourselves to rest into receivership and allowing our polar opposite, our beautiful divine masculine, to step into his fullness and to express his fullness, so that I can soften into my fullness of receiving.
Do you find it, and it's interesting you say that, because I see that here a lot in the culture here in Thailand, is there, and some people really criticize this, and I think, wow, that's too bad, because what I see is that there is kind of that definition of roles, and they don't feel bad about it. In fact, they feel really good about it, and it makes for just such an entirely different type of relationship that goes on. As you see that going on with women, where, overly masculine because they're trying to be successful and so forth, how do you help them to change that mindset of, what, it's okay to be a mother, it's okay to be a wife, it's okay to allow your husband to support you and to express his masculinity? How do you help the women to do that?
Well, Doug, this is a Western epidemic for sure.
Yes, it
is. So it's really about unlearning everything that we have learned as a result, perhaps of, previous generations overcompensating because this wasn't available to them. So they wanted it to become a priority for us in the way that we were raised. So I guess it's kind of like them living their dream for financial independence and having the career that they wanted that they couldn't have because they had to submit to a certain lifestyle or a certain role, because the support wasn't there or because the times weren't ready for them to have the type of career or the independence that they wanted. Women were only allowed their own bank accounts as late as the 70s without having a male co-signer.
Wow.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Oh, yeah, that's absurd.
You can see how this is a modern epidemic, whereas Eastern cultures, they have those naturally feminine roles established, and they allow the masculine to be their masculine, and they don't get me wrong, they probably have their own challenges and their own struggles as well.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Yeah, so it's not nirvana on the other side. But it really is about designing a life and a lifestyle that supports your highest potential. So I teach this in 4 pillars, and I call this the soul path. And the 4 pillars of your soul path are: number 1, a connection to your higher self. So that is to God, to a higher power that you can channel into you and through you as well. So your spiritual practice. Number 2 is aligned relationships. And aligned relationships are your interpersonal relationships as well as your professional relationships and your divine union, your complementary opposite partner who you choose to do life with. The 3rd pillar is your creative expression / career. I ideally want those to be one and the same thing. Although some people might have their career as separate to their creative expression. So that would be their hobbies, for example. And then number 4 is lifestyle. Is your lifestyle in alignment with your soul path? Does it support these 4 pillars? For example, if you live in the city, but your ideal lifestyle would be somewhere warm and sunny like Thailand, or for me, living in a remote village in the mountains in the Mediterranean, versus living in the city, living in London or New York, and a place that you need to have regular holidays from. You need a break from that lifestyle. I live in a place and in an environment where I haven't needed a holiday from my life in almost 3 years because I really genuinely love my life, and it has the perfect balance of pleasure and work and creativity as well. As I'm sure your choice to move to Thailand is for these reasons as well.
Well, and I actually, my home in the U.S. is up in the mountains, surrounded by mountains, and that's where I love. And I've tried to find a place like that here and haven't been able to do that. But you're right. Any stories? Do you have any stories you can share of someone that you worked with that was so over masculinized from the standpoint of the career and so forth, and where you help them to get back to that relationship with their partner, to where there really was that respect of the masculine and the feminine, and being able to feel okay again about doing those things, which, as you say, U.S. culture doesn't really promote anymore?
Mm-hmm. I do have a really fascinating case study of a woman who was extremely successful in her corporate career. However, she did find a lot of challenges even at her workplace. People weren't, in her words, respecting her. People weren't giving her the opportunities. So she felt that she had a reputation as well as a bitch. And that's because she really was over masculinized, and she was over asserting herself rather than allowing herself to receive and allowing herself to be more feminine in that work environment, simply because of the nature of the work. It was a male dominated industry that she was working in. She also was struggling to find a partnership, in her words, because men are intimidated by her success. Right. So that's another narrative that we subscribe to justify why we're struggling.
Right.
And it really required quite a lot of work in her deconditioning and her softening and her surrender, so that she could relearn or realign with her heart's desire. Her heart's desire was to be provided for and to have a beautiful, healthy relationship with a man who could hold her, who was strong enough for her so that she could be softer. So she was really looking for what she was being in relationship. And it does require deconditioning. So that means unlearning.
Did she achieve that?
She definitely has achieved it in the career perspective, in that, sorry, I just need to move locations, in that her career completely changed and the opportunities that she was being given in her work environment were changing as well. Romantically, that is something that she needs to decide is important enough for her to allow a man. And the women's main fear is that they will be disappointed. And my suggestion is let him disappoint you. Let him lead the way, even if you don't completely 100% trust his leadership, because it gives you information about how you respond. Are you naturally inclined to control? Are you naturally inclined to not trust? So that's something that you need to work with. That's a you pattern that you keep recreating and manifesting.
Yeah. And there's such a difference between control and support. And,
Exactly.
I look at that from the perspective of how nice it would be in relationships if really you're 100% focused on how can I support that other person, and recognizing, yeah, there's the weakness and so forth, but how do you support them? And they do the same for you. And that makes such a difference. So as we're closing here, is there a special message that you would like to share with the audience?
Yes, absolutely. I invite you to start dialoguing with your higher self. Instead of going to your brain to try to find the answers and the solutions, go into a deeper place where you ask for support, where you ask for the wisdom to recognize support when it appears for you, to you, and through you, in the form of strangers, in the form of opportunities, and trust that guidance. Follow it. That guidance will get stronger and that voice will get stronger the more you listen to it, dialogue with it, and follow it.
Wonderful. And how do people find you?
Instagram and Facebook are the places where I play the most and engage the most. So you can most definitely find me on those platforms as my name, which will be shared in the show notes. And I have a phenomenal 3-day free event, which is called the Soul Manifestation Code. And I've made this free so that it's accessible to everyone. And you will have 3 days with me where you get to explore some of the tools that I teach. And I really do highly recommend it for someone who is on their healing journey, their personal development, or self-actualization journey.
Well, and with your methodology, are you able to help people remotely? Because obviously you live in a remote place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my work has always exclusively been online. So that's what I love about the nature of my work, that all we need is a good internet connection, which sometimes we don't have. But yes, absolutely. All you need is the ability to hear me, and I'm able to support you through my voice.
That's wonderful. Anastasia, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. And what a blessing that you must be to those women you work with and helping them to really experience that divine potential within them.
Mm.
So appreciate it. And kudos to
Oh,
you.
thank you so much. Thank you,
Okay.
Doug. And
You
that's
bet.
also the reason that I've launched the certification so that I can share this gift and create a ripple effect through these beautiful women as well.
Well, that's right. And just briefly, so you are now helping, you're certifying other women to be able to do the same thing, which I think is terrific, which wonderful. So again, they can find you on Facebook, and that's important. And so anyway, we're done, and thank you so much. And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to having you join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.